The car was parked in a far corner of the lot, under a flickering light. The engine had been off for 20 minutes, but he hadn't moved. The dashboard clock glowed quietly, 9:47 p.m. The inside of the car smelled like old coffee and fast food, the kind of scent that clings to you when your life feels stuck. He sat with the phone in his hand, thumb hovering over the screen, staring at the words he had sent hours earlier. "I'm sorry for what I said. I was wrong. You didn't deserve that. I hope you can forgive me." Below the message read 7:13 p.m. No dots, no reply, just silence. His hands were clenched, not in anger, but in helplessness. He hadn't meant to say those words that day, but they had flown out of him like shrapnel, sharp, fast, unfiltered. He'd seen the look in their eyes, shock, then pain, then distance. And now, that look haunted him every time he closed his own. He drove home slowly, but the road felt unreal. His thoughts were heavier than the car. That night, sleep never came. He lay staring at the ceiling in the dark, hearing a dozen versions of the same question. What if they never forgive me? What if I don't deserve to be forgiven? What if God agrees with them? At 3:04 a.m., he sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, hands folded in front of his mouth, not praying, just thinking, or maybe hoping someone, anyone, was listening. By morning, the world kept spinning. The sun rose. People rushed off to work. But inside him, everything still felt paused. He opened his Bible, not out of discipline, but desperation. And that's when he saw the verse. Not one he'd marked before. Not one he had underlined or highlighted in yellow. Matthew 5, verse 23 through 24. If you are offering your gift at the altar, and remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there. First go and be reconciled with them. His chest tightened. He thought, is God saying I'm not right with him unless they forgive me? Am I spiritually blocked until they give me permission to move on? He had already apologized twice. He had even written a letter and left it on their porch. An honest, broken out, handwritten letter. The kind that took 2 hours to write and even longer to fold. Still, nothing. If they weren't going to forgive him, was God going to hold it against him too? The weight of that question crushed him. Not just because he feared God's silence, but because he felt hopeless to change the outcome. He could try 100 more times and still be ignored. And deep down, he began to believe. Maybe I don't deserve grace. That night, exhausted and numb, he collapsed on the floor by his bed. The room was silent, save for the ticking of a cheap wall clock and some hum of the heater. The carpet pressed against his forehead. he prayed, not in beautiful words, but in broken ones. God, please, I've done everything I know to do. I confessed, I apologized, I owned it. I can't make them forgive me. I can't make them love me again. But I need to know, do you still love me? Or am I too far gone? Now, he reached for the Bible again and opened it randomly. One of those desperate last hope flips. This time, it landed on Ephesians 2, verse 8 through 9. For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith. And this is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works. He froze. Not by works. Not by perfect apologies. Not by getting people to like you again. Not by being good enough to undo the bad. And it hit him all at once. Grace is a gift, not a trade, not a reward, a gift. And God wasn't waiting for them to forgive him. God had already forgiven him. The cross didn't depend on their response. It depended on Jesus. And Jesus had already declared, "It is finished." He sat there for a long time. No more begging, no more bargaining, just breathing. And for the first time in weeks, he could breathe without shame pressing on his chest. He stood up slowly, not because the burden was gone entirely, but because it had shifted. He no longer carried the need for human approval as a key to divine love. He walked into the bathroom, looked at his reflection in the mirror, and whispered, "You're forgiven." Even if they never say it, God already did. The next day, the silence from the other person continued. No reply, no acknowledgement, but this time it didn't feel like a prison. He made coffee, he opened the blinds, he even sang a little while washing dishes, because something had changed. He still wished for reconciliation. He still hoped to see healing. But he was no longer a prisoner to someone else's choice. He had met a deeper, quieter truth in the whisper, and it whispered to his soul, "You are forgiven, not because they let go of what you did, but because I did." So maybe you've been sitting with guilt that won't go away. Maybe you've reached out, apologized, you've done all you can, and still they haven't responded. And now, maybe you wonder if God's arms are crossed until they open theirs. Well, let me tell you, with the authority of Scripture and the tenderness of grace, you are not unforgivable. You are not beyond restoration, and you are not waiting on them to be loved by him. If you have truly repented, if you have done what depends on you, then walk forward, not in shame, not in fear, but in the light of forgiveness. Because Jesus isn't watching for a reply from them before he gives his to you. And his reply is always the same: "Come home, you are still mine." I did this today because sometimes you wonder, if they don't forgive me, am I still forgiven by God? I've always felt throughout my whole life I had to go to somebody and get their it's okay or their forgiveness to go to heaven. I always thought someday I'm going to go before God and he's going to bring these things up that I've done, and I won't have been forgiven from the person that I actually did that to. So as a result, he won't forgive me, and I'm going to have to go to some bad place, or this isn't going to go good for me. So, and when I was going through the Bible, I found these passages, and they were given to me, and it fully convinced me that we're not waiting on others to give us their forgiveness before God will give us his. So don't you worry about God. He's got you. And he doesn't need their permission or them to forgive you for him to give you a pass. It's 100% true. God bless you, my friends. Have a beautiful day. Hope that gives you a little peace. Take care.